Welcome back to another episode of Finally Motivated, where we explore the stories of everyday entrepreneurs and so that you can gain inspiration and motivation for your own journey. Today, we have a very special guest. So not all superheroes wear capes. Some of them go to law school and help landlords like myself save on costly mistakes and headaches. Today, we have Miss Bonnie. Bonnie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
This is a true honor to have you on here. I feel like you are just such a go-getter and you're so knowledgeable in what you do. We met at a networking event where you were teaching landlords about what they should not do, what they should do, and I think you were discussing LLCs and stuff like that. But this takes a lot of understanding and it takes a lot of commitment. And I'm really curious about what made you become a lawyer in the first place, Bonnie.
I wish I had some really grand reason why I became a lawyer. I kind of want to say I fell into it. I don't have a family. Didn't know a lawyer, never worked at a law firm. I'd say I started kind of getting funneled there because I was smart. I was a good writer and I didn't like science. And so I was like, all right. Um, Med school, which was initially growing up what I thought I wanted to be was a doctor, is just like chemistry is not clicking for me. And so I did well in it, but I was like, I didn't enjoy struggling in school. And so I was kind of pursued more of like writing and history. And when I went to college, I studied business. And as part of the business curriculum, you had to take a business law course. And I loved it. Like my professor was just a rock star. He was awesome. I had a few lawyers who were adjuncts and who were lawyers. And I was like, this seems to make sense. I'm, I'm doing well in college. I'm a good writer and I like these teachers that I'm having that are talking about law. And so that's kind of how I just ended up going to law school.
Wow, so this was in college and you saw an example of other people doing it, I'm guessing, within the within university and you thought, you know what, I can do this too, and this aligns with me a little bit better than
Yeah, it was
chemistry did.
something that I felt like clicked with the way my brain worked, which I
Ah.
liked. I liked the puzzles and putting the pieces together to kind of come up with a solution. And I just thought these were engaging people who I classes I did well in.
Mm.
I don't really know anything. And, when you find those professors when you're in college, they start to become mentors. They then, start encouraging you. Have you thought about doing an internship at a law firm? Have you thought about doing law school? And so that started planting the seeds for me, thinking about a career path that I definitely did not go to college thinking I was going to go to law school. And I ended up graduating
Yeah.
college in 3 years. So that way I could go to law school and reduce any sort of, debt or anything I would incur with that extra year of college. And so
Yeah.
it definitely very quickly became the plan.
Yeah. Did you know that your brain always worked this way and you ignored it? Or was it more so a discovery for you? You like solving problems and putting puzzles together and all of that?
Yeah, I think it was kind of just like a slow unraveling of figuring out like where my strengths were and wanting to be in that area of strength. And perhaps, looking back as like a 15-year-old, like there's probably a little bit of like laziness associated with that like I was in, an advanced honors chemistry class and I could have probably stayed up all night and forced myself to figure it out if I really, really, really wanted to be a doctor, but I really, really didn't enjoy doing that. And I really, really did enjoy like my AP European history essay assignment. And so
You said
at
you
some
didn't
point,
enjoy that.
I loved my essay
Oh, you
assignments.
did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't love
We grew up different, Bonnie.
but
And that's
exactly though.
okay.
And so it was one of those things where I was like getting, I was winning awards based off of my writing. I was getting, a lot of praise from my teachers. And in my head, like that was like what the smart kids in the class would do. Like if you were smart and good at science, you went to med school. And if you were smart and you were good at writing, you went to law school. And that's kind of just like
Yeah.
the two options that I saw. And looking back, I'm happy with the path that I've gone down, but I do think I self limited myself a lot during those times, thinking that that was really the only two paths that I could have gone down. And there's a lot of things, especially now, I feel like in this day of like digital marketing, things like that, that you can do as a really good writer.
Yeah.
There's also, I always loved real estate and we'll probably get to that at some point, but there's also a lot of things you can do in real estate that
Yeah.
are not necessarily law either. Like I looking back, I'm like, I probably would be like an architect, but like that was just like not on my radar. And so I that was one thing that I wish like in my high school era that I was just kind of exposed to a little bit more types of professions than if you're smart, you're a doctor or a lawyer.
I wonder what that would have looked like, Bonnie, as the architect. It's really funny because a lot of the things that we feel, if it was a little bit different, you would have been a completely different person. So
Totally.
who knows where things would have gone. So if you didn't have those limitations that you put on your mind for what you could have been because you looked at a certain set of options, what else do you think your mind would have thrived in? You mentioned architect. Did you ever consider other things that your mind would have been thriving in?
Just being a writer. Like I think if I would have pursued like just creative writing or being a novelist or something like that, I did dabble in that a little bit at the beginning of college when you have a little bit more flexibility to take, like liberal arts types of classes. And I enjoyed them. But then at some point it's like, well, I was a business major. I got to take more business classes. And there wasn't that much opportunity to kind of dabble in both.
Oh,
And it's I don't have any regrets. I've never taken an architectural course. I may have this fantasy in my head of like what it would have, been like as like a possible alternative. And I may have taken one class and hated it. I mean, I have a very good friend who is an architectural school dropout. It's a hugely intense program. It's like a 6 year degree. And so I don't try to live too much in the past about it. But if you were to ask what if, those are probably the two other paths that I could have seen
yeah.
myself taking.
Yeah, well, I have good news. You're young and you know what you're doing, and I can definitely see you being an author in the future without it taking you off your path. So I really look forward to reading that book and seeing that out there.
Thanks. That is definitely something that is still on my list. I have not written that off by any means. No pun
Awesome.
intended.
Awesome. Hey, I like that. So what is it like to be, put me inside your shoes for a day. What's it like to be a lawyer?
Well, I'll start from the very beginning of the day and I'll give today just as an example. So I woke up at 5:50, looked at my phone first thing, which is a bad habit that I'm trying to break. But
It's okay.
I tell myself that blue light jolt, like it makes me awake. And so that's the bad advice I'm giving myself at the time. Um, I went to a solid core workout by 6:30, got home at
Solid
7.
core?
Yeah, it's like a pseudo Pilates type of thing.
So you're working on your
Um,
core.
yeah, working
Okay.
on it all today was everything. I'm just gonna feel that tomorrow.
Got it.
Get home, I have 3 little kids, so until about 8:30 or so, from 7:30 to 8:30, it is all hands on deck, making sure everyone is dressed and has their food and their backpack and their homework's in the backpack, not, like, thrown across the kitchen table somewhere, and I work from home. It's a pro and a con. Most days I like it. I'm about 5 years deep into running a fully virtual law firm right now. I'm debating whether or not I want to go back to having office space. I think I kind of do. But around 8:30 or so, I try to like ease into my day, usually review my planner, review I like to read a business book or listen to a business podcast before I get started to kind of get me hyped up. Be like,
Mhm,
yes, we're working on big things and we're excited about these big things.
mhm.
And then I usually have some sort of like a big rock that I try to tackle first thing. Usually I have a few big rocks, whether that's usually client projects in some way, a big contract I need to tackle or documents that need to be reviewed or delivered back to a client. I try to do that first thing before I look at my inbox. Because my inbox is where my day will go sideways. It is where people who are, either they're trying to hire me, great, or they're trying to, figure out what's going on with a certain matter, or they're just passing along new information. That's a lot of what lawyers do is we're kind of like the middleman of helping people get from point A to point B and whatever that situation is. For some people, those are lawsuits. For me, it's much more of a transactional strategic uh, type of practice that I have. Usually at some point during the day, I'm probably tackling some sort of home-based task, which might be like throwing the laundry in or making sure the dishwasher's unloaded. That way we're not wanting to murder somebody around dinner time. And then I try to stop working between usually by 3:30. And that is because that's when my kids come home. And the reason why I started my firm over 6 years ago was that I wanted to be there for my kids. And so
Wow.
being able to have that flexibility and really control my schedule. Yes, it makes between 9 and 3:30, sometimes really intense. But after that, I love that I have the flexibility to step away. Some days I may be at the playground, kind of keeping my own at my inbox for some sort of time sensitive deadline. Unfortunately, that sometimes happens, especially in the transactional space where 5 p.m. is kind of like a gold standard for things to happen. And so I'm like, until 5 p.m. happens, we're not through the clear of seeing which way somebody's going to go on a deal. But that's how I would generally say. And then in the afternoon, once the kids come home, it's dinner and homework and after school activities. And then by bedtime, I'm usually tired, really tired. And I usually just wrap up my day with some reading, podcasts. I'm really big into just constantly learning. I say sometimes it's a blessing and a curse, but I'm in an industry where continuing knowledge it's a must have. It's not a nice to have. And so making sure that I'm on my game at all
Yeah.
times is important. And so I try to squeeze those little continuing education where I can.
I love that as you explain your day, you mention a lot of you being a well-rounded human being. You are a mom, you are a wife, you are someone who wants to build a business that doesn't kill you, but a business that supports who you are and what your priorities are. How did you get to that point where you gained the confidence to put Bonnie basically you're putting Bonnie first and your business supports the kind of lifestyle that you wanted. And not everyone does that.
Yeah, I think some of it is seeing the alternative and having worked in the alternative will teach you real quick. Like, if I'm going to be my own boss, I'm going to do it for me. There's a lot of easier ways to make money and collect a W 2 income, especially as a lawyer, than running your own law firm. But for me, that was the big reason why. Before I hung my shingle, I worked in the government. I was a criminal prosecutor for several years, and I was on a trial list where I was in court basically five days a week. Every single day there was a different trial list or motion hearing or grand jury or something like that where I was inaccessible from 8:30 to 4:30 with a 1 hour lunch break if the court took a lunch. And so I saw with my son after he was born um, that just wasn't going to work. That lifestyle for me wasn't what I wanted as a parent. I have a ton of friends who are still there, so it's not a judgment call on them. But for me, it was a compromise I wasn't willing to make at that time. And I was also really, think two things. One, I was really fortunate that, like, financially, my husband and I, through our real estate and through his work at the time, I was able to leave the government and start my practice. But also that I always had this itch, this like entrepreneurial itch. And so I kind of felt like at some point, like I wasn't going to retire at the government. I knew that. Um, and at some point, I was going to hang my shingle. It's a goal I had from a friend from my first day in my first class in college. We had this dream, this vision. I'm still waiting for her to join me. She just made partner at a big firm, so I don't think she will. But um, of us with a law firm, and we were joking we would have a shark tank in the front of it, we were going to be sharks, and I'm like, that is totally not the lawyer that I am at this point. It was a dream I always had, was to have my own practice, and so the cards kind of aligned at that point, and like having my son made it the necessity in my head where I was like, this is not, like, I will not be a lawyer. This is how it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you think that that itch came from? How do you think it was developed? Because I've realized that not everyone has the itch. And it's just like,
No.
why don't you want to have a business?
Right,
But
I'm
it's
like,
like,
why doesn't everybody have the edge?
yeah.
I'm not sure. I think some of it, my dad is an entrepreneur. He's still an entrepreneur. And so seeing him have that kind of flexibility to be able to be the one who goes on our field trips and be able to be creative in a lot of different ways that I don't think I would be able to as a lawyer. Like, I don't think I would be satisfied if all I did was practice law. I love that since now I'm an entrepreneur, I get to do marketing and I get to put on like my business, school training with, looking at my books and things like that and understanding financial reports. And there's ups and downs. Like, not everything is fun and dandy, but I like how it makes my day varied. And I know before we hopped on, we're all self-diagnosing ourselves with ADD, but I think it satisfies that part of my brain where I'm like, I get to do a bunch of different things and I get to try different things out, and it's like a constant dopamine hit of being able to control my day, and even as a lawyer, being able to control the kinds of clients that are on my desk is like such a gift. So often we as attorneys, like we just have to work on whatever's like thrown on our desk. And I have the extraordinary privilege, and I don't say this like disparagingly for people who my firm chooses not to work with, but to be able to truly just be like, hey, you're not a fit for me, either due to what you're asking for or due to my time capacity at a particular moment. And that is, I really, really do enjoy that because I know from past experience, previous jobs, that lawyers don't have that type of flexibility for the most part.
Yeah, yeah. How did you gain the confidence to, like, create that for yourself and say, "You know what? I do have this itch and I'm going to pursue that. And I know that there's another option for me, but I'm going to do it this way."
I'd say a few different things. One, I have an amazing husband who has supported me every step of the way through that process and has encouraged it and like has been my biggest cheerleader through all of it. And I think that is a big, big piece of it. Having
Yeah.
a partner or a friend or a parent or anything like that, being able to say, like, you got this is huge. Another piece of it, I would say, is I didn't know any different. Like in my head, it's like, how hard can it be? Look at this like schmuck that comes into court every day. Like he's out there, he's providing for his family, like there's his law firm. I'm like, how hard can it be? And for good or for bad, like I didn't know anyone else who owned a law firm. I didn't, have a role model. And so I kind of built it and figured it out as I went along. And even today, like sometimes I'm like, there's got to be a better way to be doing this than the way I'm doing it. And I'm like, I have, at this point, I have friends and other people who have law firms that, when I feel like I'm kind of grinding up against something and I'm like, it shouldn't be this difficult um, to be able to troubleshoot those things with. But I think some of it is just like fearlessness and maybe a little bit of ignorance.
Yeah.
Just being like, how bad can it be? Like, what do you need? And also, now there's Facebook groups and there's YouTube channels and there's so much just like free resources out there. I mean, before I hung my shingle, I probably spent a year reading books on like starting a law firm, going into different Facebook groups, taking like continuing ed classes that they offer for lawyers, and realizing I'm like, I need an LLC and a malpractice policy. Like everything else is the cherry on top. Like even like a website. Like there's lawyers out there who still don't have a website. I'm like, and they're feeding their family. And so
Yeah.
all of it doesn't have to be as complicated as I think a lot of people make it out to be. And I think there's
Yeah.
also just like a lot of ego that can be driven into things, and I still kind of push up against that
Yeah.
sometimes of like, this is what a law firm is supposed to look like, or this is the way a lawyer's supposed to talk or whatever. And I've just kind of said, I'm just going to be me, and
Yeah.
that works.
That's something that I fight with as well. I have a personality assessment for entrepreneurs, and it
Mm,
breaks us all down into 9 different types. And one of the types that I score high in is visionary. And one of the things that we're motivated by at the core is to impress ourselves. And externally, we're motivated by other people being impressed by what we do. So then if you are, then I'm going to keep doing it. So it keeps the cycle
the
going.
feedback loop. Yeah.
Yeah, the feedback loop, exactly. And that at the core is basically I'm satisfying my ego. And within my coaching framework, one of the things that I teach is there are certain restraints that you have to apply based on your personality type. And one of
Mm.
those restraints for me as a visionary is don't let your ego get in the way. Utilize it as energy for you to impress yourself. Yes, but understand that there are things that you don't know that you can learn from that allows you to grow and grow your business. And when you can hold back in a way and restrain that ego, you make space for you to actually grow and see where you fall short in. And I think, yeah, I just wanted to say, I think a lot of us, we fall into that. How do we put our ego aside a little bit so that we can grow? So
Are you
thank
asking
you
for
for
me for an
bringing,
answer for that?
thank you for
I
bringing
I
that
think
up, but I just want to know
yeah.
what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, for me, it's not so much an ego that the way that I think it presents probably with like most lawyers, where it's like I'm seeking that external validation as much as I'm seeking like my own internal standards of validation. I would actually have it right behind me. I'm reading that book that, who was it, AJ Brown was reading, Inner Excellence, which talks a lot about this. And for me, it comes up with like fear, perfectionism, and things like that, that kind of keep me from just taking the next step. And so like that's something I'm actively trying to work on in particular this year, is just like, don't be afraid to like make a mistake, test
Mm,
open, be, experiment. Don't feel like there's a lot of things that I think we put the pressure on ourselves to just know as the entrepreneur. And I'm like, you just can't know. You can't know until you put something to market, or you can't know until you talk to your own customers about it. And I know I have a bad habit of just kind of getting in my head and being like, the answer's there somewhere, the answer's somewhere,
yeah,
I can find it if I just, work hard enough, or I listen to one more podcast, or I, talk, refine that chat GPT prompt or whatever it is that I'm trying to figure
mhm.
out. I'm like, no, the answer will come if I just put it out there and see.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of our answers usually come as we remain in motion. As long as we
Hmm.
remain in motion and we're motivated to just continue to keep going, the answers will come. But I think I'm not sure, but I think one of the personality types that you might be is an expert. And let me know if I'm wrong, but as an expert, you're motivated, you are the go-to person. So you gain confidence by understanding specifically what the information that's valuable to people are, and you put a lot of emphasis on the integrity of the information. And so if you don't know the answer, you will dive deep until you hyper focus enough to get that information, and if you don't have it, you're going to hesitate to provide that information. Does that sound right?
Yes, yes. I would say that
But
that's definitely part of who I am, for
tell me
sure.
more.
Okay. For me, like having done like personality tests and things like that, like I also score very high on like visionary types of things. And so I
Mhm.
see that as a stronger trait than probably perhaps the expert trait is. I definitely, and I
Mm,
think some of that is just like as a lawyer, like I'm very particular about like preciseness. I'm very, bothered by a lot of things I see on like social media, where people kind of play fast and loose in a way that like the true professionals in the industry, whether it's a lawyer or a CPA or a financial advisor, because they're, really regulated about the types of things that they can or can't say. And so I do think that that's really important. I don't, and maybe I do, maybe I have to sit on it a little bit more and,
no, I could
feel
be
how.
wrong. I'd love for you to take it
I don't
so that
think
I
you're
know for
wrong.
sure.
I think that is who I am. I just don't know think that that's who I am necessarily as an entrepreneur.
There are different things that I've realized that drives us. Even though as an entrepreneur, we have to be different things. You have to have a vision, you have to have a strategy, you have to
Yeah.
create certain artwork sometimes, you have to be an expert in things, but but there are things that drive you a lot stronger than the other things that just come on your plate.
Yeah, 100%. And just thinking about this expert, again, it's kind of what we were talking about before, like the details are not necessarily like my strongest suit.
Mhm.
And so I feel like an expert like that would be. I get kind of caught up in like the macro of things. But to say that like I'm the person, well, I notice everybody else's mistakes. I never notice my own. And that's not due to an ego thing. It's just like I'm
Mhm.
visibly blind to like my own typos and things like that.
Are you big on strategy?
Yes.
Okay, so the strategist might be more big picture. So yeah, the details matter. As a strategist, strategists are focused on making a vision come to life. So if you have an objective, the client has an objective, you're going to figure out the best way to make that happen
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
and put whatever needs to be put together. One thing that with a strategist, the restraint that needs to be applied with a strategist is knowing that there are times when you can come up with the entire thing in your mind and it's like it gives you satisfaction, fulfillment, even if it didn't happen.
Yes. No, this is the one that is me. You found
Yeah,
it. This is me.
so you can
That,
be in your head a
yes.
lot sometimes.
Yes, I'm
And
also a
I have
Pisces, and so that probably lines up with that too.
Yeah.
I'm in my head a lot. Yeah, that is me, strategist, 100%. And that's also like the part of law that I enjoy the most is when I get to be in that strategy standpoint. And that's something
Yeah.
that I've kind of have whittled down even since I've, started my practice and being like, what parts of this not only do I enjoy the most, but do I feel like I'm acting in my strength? Because when I'm acting in my strength, then that
Yeah.
is truly like when my clients benefit the most. And so for me, that is like that when I get to play strategist 100%, or I get to play strategist in my own business. There's nothing more that I love than like being like, here's the big goal. Now here's the quarterly plan that
Mhm.
makes it happen. But then all those
Yeah.
little other details, I need like, what do they call them? Like an integrator or something like that to kind of like
Mhm.
keep me and the ball moving forward.
Yeah, I love it. Isn't it interesting that there are so many people that do things because they're good at, but a lot of us, we haven't found the things that drive us. And
Mm,
sometimes we might get clues of it and we might end up doing a little bit more of that, but we don't really have that awareness of like, it's actually this piece of the work that drives me. So for example, I was a commercial real estate agent for a bit,
mm,
and I did it because I knew I could, but not because there was a lot of the things within it that drove me, that really motivated me. And I had to fail fast with that and just pivot because I realized I have much more strengths as a motivational coach for entrepreneurs than to be a commercial real estate agent. And we only got
yeah,
one life to live.
100%. Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I don't think it comes to you at once or all at once. Like even with that
No,
pivot, you could see from like going from being an agent to being a motivational coach. And then you're like, well, even within that realm, it's like, well, who am I best servicing through my coaching? Like
there's
who is like
growth
my
in that.
chart? Yeah. It's constant growth. And I think when you're just kind of like open to that and like being like, all right, there's a river and I'm gonna kind of hop on it. And yeah, there's different
And
like
be water.
tributaries. Yeah, it's be
Yeah,
water, 100%. And you just kind of have to, the past is nothing, the future is nothing. There's only this moment, right? That's like the
absolutely.
Zen ideology.
So Bonnie, what keeps you going on a daily basis? You're in a profession that is intimidating for a lot of people. Like, how do you do that? So what keeps you going every day? Because we know what made you get into it, but what keeps
Yeah,
you going?
that I think I can always be better at it. I don't think I'm at my peak, if that makes any sense. That I
That makes
still
a lot
know
of
it.
sense.
Yeah, that I think that that the best is still yet to come in many ways. I'm still figuring it out. And because I love the puzzle and the game of entrepreneurship, I'm like, I can't let it go. There was times a few years ago where I was like, I could make money easier than what I'm doing. Like I'm smart enough, I'll go figure out some other line of business. And like I don't know that being a lawyer is has to be the end all be all for me. But I couldn't let it go. I'm
Yeah.
like this is like my Rubik's cube or whatever it is.
There's a
And
puzzle,
yeah, and I
and you're
really
gonna
just kind
flow
of
in this river.
yeah, yeah. It's been a lot of fun and I'm really kind of also I'm proud of what I've built and I enjoy the day-to-day work. Like I enjoy being, you know, getting to do what I get to do during the day. If I didn't do it,
Yeah.
I probably would be like, I'm out. And there was times when my practice was like, I'll give you an example. It was like very transactionally heavy in 2021 and 2022. The market was on fire. My firm was exploding with transactional work, which is not me and my forte, right? My forte is more on the strategic side of things, not the minutia and the details and the deadlines and all of that. Um, not say we can't manage it. I just felt constant overwhelm by it because it was like there was deadlines happening multiple times a day, all every single day. While some people would be like, "All right, that's organized chaos." For me, it just kind of felt like the house was on fire,
Yeah,
and
yeah. No, I get that.
there were some points where I was just like, "I'm going to burn out. Like, I don't enjoy this," and I raised my prices and I raised my prices, and I was like,
Hmm.
maybe that'll make it slow down, and it
Yeah.
ultimately took for me to just kind of stop marketing that a bit.
That's a great problem.
It
It
was a
sounds like
great problem.
yeah, but it wasn't
Yeah.
but it's not a fun problem.
No, and everything was fine. Like everything from like the client side, like everyone was happy. Everything was going great.
Yeah.
Like but for me, like I just felt like I was like the most tightly wound person all
Yeah.
day because it didn't matter. Like I couldn't check the box off that like everything was done because I knew the next day I just had 500 more deadlines that were going to come up. I'm exaggerating slightly, but it could have been,
Mhm.
we had 100 open transactions at any given time.
Yeah.
And it was me and a paralegal. So it was a
Wow.
lot on
So
top
I
of like
was
the other type of work.
So I was accurate with your introduction when I called you a superhero then, because that does sound like a lot
Or
of
a
different.
masochist.
But, you're discovering more about yourself, you're exploring, and I've noticed that within myself as well as other entrepreneurs where one person can be doing one thing and they do not get overwhelmed because they're operating in their strengths.
Yeah.
And then you'll see someone else doing something that, oh man, I could do that, because there are things that you do that fuel you, even though it's energy that you're exerting, but it fuels you in a way because it
Hmm.
drives you. And there are other things that just drain you and you just can't get that energy back and you're just tired and done. And that
Yeah.
adds to the overwhelm. And it seems like the strategy, it kind of fuels you in a way. And a lot of the transactions, that's more in the draining category.
100%. So now if I have, right now I probably have about a dozen or so transactions. And I'm like, that's great. I think it makes me feel like I'm important in my inbox. I'm kidding. But I think it's an important service that I offer to existing clients without having to market for it. And
Yeah.
if it comes, it comes. And if it doesn't come, then I'm not missing it by any means.
Yeah, Bonnie, thank you so much for just the insight that you've provided. I think there are going to be a lot of people that when they watch this, they'll see a bit of themselves in you in different ways. And
Yeah.
I think just you being you one with you being a lawyer, and I think that that's so cool. As grown up as an immigrant, that's one of the top two options that I had,
Exactly.
and you're one of them.
I get that. I get that.
So that's awesome. It's like you made it, Bonnie.
Oh,
So
thank you. Thank you. My
yeah,
Jewish grandparents would agree with you.
yeah, that's awesome. So I think it's great to, give not only give yourself grace, but to continue to be proud of yourself on a daily basis. When the accolades dry up and you don't remember how proud people are for you, remember that you're doing something that a lot of other people would love to be in your position. You're building a business that you can be proud of. The way that you want to build it, you're building it. And so I'm proud of you for being able to have that confidence and continue to do that on a daily basis. So keep being water and keep growing. I would love to end this with having other people understand a bit about what's next for you and what you're looking forward to and how can people find you.
Yeah. So I would say that I'm in my next phase of entrepreneurship. Since I've had my firm in the last 6 years, I've had two kids, one being 18 months ago. And I've kind of intentionally kept my firm small and easy because that's what I wanted at the time was that I needed something that I could scale up when I wanted to and scale, be able to very easily kind of put things on the back burner when I had my girls. And so now that I'm through having children. Like, there's no more playing small for Bonnie. There is, putting a lot more emphasis on like my marketing and getting myself out there and really kind of leaning into growing this business beyond myself. And I really can't wait for that to happen. I have a lot of coals in the fire right now, and I'm excited to see which one and how they all pan out. People are interested in connecting with me. I am a South Jersey based attorney. My offices serve investors in New Jersey and Pennsylvania with estate planning, asset protection, and some transactional work, although not a ton. And I also have a digital course called Landlord Law School, which essentially teaches landlords all the things I wish that they knew before working with an attorney to prevent so many of the most common mistakes.
Wow, that is awesome. That is awesome. And then I'll put your social media handles in the description, but that was great. Bonnie, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been a true pleasure, and I look forward to having you come by the office sometime
Yes.
so we can continue our conversations. But everyone give it up for Bonnie.
Thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Do you hear that?
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, let it soak in.
Yes, I
Okay,
love
thank you
it. That
so
was
much,
so much
Bonnie.
fun.